Good day and welcome to this search and rescue themed webinar put on by the Montreal, Ottawa chapter of the Vertical Flight Society. We're really excited about the lineup of speakers we've got assembled today. Next slide, please, Chris. My name is Wesley Reed. I serve as Vice President of the Montreal, Ottawa chapter of the Vertical Flight Society. Our chapter is obviously based in the aerospace hub of the Montreal, Ottawa region, but being the only chapter in Canada, we like to reach out beyond those two cities and spotlight any great work in the realm of vertical lift being done in Canada. We're lucky to have the active participation of OEMs and tier one suppliers in the region like Bell, Pratt & Whitney, CAE, and Dart Aerospace, as well as local schools like ETS, Polytechnique, Concordia, and McGill University, where our chapter there put on a great design competition earlier this month. And then there's also this new and growing ecosystem of UAV and eVTOL startups. Next slide, please. The Vertical Flight Society, if you're not familiar with it, was founded originally in 1943 as the American Helicopter Society with the goal of promoting interest in vertical flight. To this day, we aim to connect academia and industry, manufacturers and operators using vertical lift to spur the industry forward. Today, we'll be talking about search and rescue, which is one of the higher profile applications of vertical lift. And if you enjoyed today's webinar, we'll be putting on another event at the same time next week, diving into some more case studies of rescues done by the Canadian Armed Forces. Next slide, please. Our speakers today include a representative of Talon Helicopters, a private company doing search and rescue work in the Vancouver area. Jarrett Lunn is the chief pilot. North Shore Rescue, which is a volunteer search and rescue operation in the North Shore Vancouver area, and Noah Pawlowski is doing some great work with drones to expand their capability. And then we have two representatives of the Sûreté de Québec, Quebec's provincial police force that include the search and rescue in their mission set. So our first speaker is Jarrett Lunn, who's the chief pilot at Talon Helicopters. Jarrett started flying helicopters in 2007, beginning his career in northern BC, doing missions on logging and mining support. He quickly developed a passion for utility work and external load operations. He's done work all around Canada and the US, but has settled down at a base position in Talon Helicopters, where his focus is search and rescue and firefighting operations. He's been there for 8 years. He's now the chief pilot and Transport Canada approved check pilot. He splits his time between conducting company tests, company flight training, and his role as the rescue and utility pilot. So thank you, Jarrett, for volunteering to speak today, and I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, like was mentioned there, Jarrett Lunn, Talon Helicopters, been working here for some years now and really enjoying my time in Vancouver flying locally here. If we could go next slide. Here's a nice shot of our AS365 Dauphin helicopter we use for multiple roles. We're a commercial helicopter operator. Most of our work is not based on long-term fixed contracts. We need to be quite versatile here and adaptable, and this aircraft in particular, along with some of our others, we find really fits that multi-role platform. I'll talk a bit about the flying side and a bit about the maintenance development side behind the scenes that we go through here at Talon as a commercial operator to make things work on our end. Next slide. We are talking about search and rescue, but like mentioned, firefighting is a big role we do. So this aircraft we use for search and rescue and firefighting, among other charter work as well, but those would be the two biggest topics for sure. Here's a shot from this past summer. We took this aircraft and spent 2 months straight helping out on the wildfires in the interior of BC this summer, and it was a busier year than normal, but quite normal for us to leave the coast here and go help out on fires in the interior. Next slide. Here's just a nice scenic shot flying away from the fire on our way home for fuel. As you can see, Photo 1, we're flying the belly tank on the aircraft. Photo 2, where you got a long line and a bucket. Again, the modular concept of these aircraft for us multi-role commercial operators is key. We need to be able to switch from doing a hoist on a search and rescue call in the morning to fighting a fire in the afternoon, if that fire is close to a built-up area, or if we wanted to fight that fire at night. The belly tank is required. We're not going to fly the bucket and the long line at night, and we're not going to fly the bucket and the long line during the day. So that modular multi-role aircraft is key to us. Next slide. Scenic shot there. This was on a test flight. We worked with DART and Simplex to develop night hover capabilities for this belly tank at night. Operationally, we needed to be able to drop water at night, and one of the restrictions was you couldn't use that hover snorkel at night. So we worked with some of the manufacturers to develop a modified mirror which doesn't reflect our landing light back into the pilot's eyes. So we're now able to use a full hover fill program at night while tanking, which was a unique program for us. Next slide. Again, I'm just shooting through a few here quickly as they're more firefighting, but the whole program for us is being able to offer as many tools as possible to our clients, because we really don't know what we're going to do in the morning versus the afternoon versus what we're going to do tomorrow. Here's another photo. You can see we've got the hoist hanging off the aircraft, the belly tank on the machine, the hover fill snorkel installed. It's a training day on this particular photo, but again, we build, develop, and test a lot of off-the-shelf products we will use, and we'll find they're just not quite perfect for what we're after, and we'll work with the manufacturers, whether it be Simplex, DART, Goodrich, the hoist manufacturers, and we will tweak and modify their existing equipment to fit our role. Search and rescue, there's a lot of external load work we do, Class D, HEC work, so we're flying human external cargo, whether it's on the long line below the A stars and twin stars or on the hoist of the 365. A lot of the rescue equipment is very specific to what the search and rescue members need, but it also has to be compatible with Transport Canada regulations, the hoist in use, etc. So there's not really a grab and go product on the shelf. So we work with the rescue teams like North Shore Rescue and manufacturers like Petzl, who make rock climbing harnesses, and we'll collaborate to come up with a finished product that works for all involved. Next slide. Again, training flight here, we've got the hoist on, we've got the belly tank on. This was when we were pushing our night vision goggle envelopes as pilots. We've done a lot of work during the day, we've done a lot of work at night. This particular training exercise, we were blending the two and allowing pilots to learn how to fly from daylight into night without taking a break in between. So all of our night vision goggle technology is mounted, ready to go. The pilots are flying in the daylight. We allow it to become dark as we're working, and see how pilots were able to adjust and switch to night vision techniques while flying. Next slide. In the cockpit of our 365 here, fully modified lighting system to be adaptable for our NVG products. A big undertaking from our maintenance department. As a pilot, they were very kind to me and let me custom choose where I wanted switches, buttons, gauges, etc. So we work as a team here between the maintenance department, the avionics department, the pilots, and we'll develop the optimal layout for our operation. So again, we've got hoist capability, night capability, tanking capability, all incorporated into one aircraft. It's not something where the aircraft just shows up from the manufacturer ready to go. This is a lot of behind the scenes work that we work on. So that way, when we do go out with North Shore Rescue or the BC Wildfire Service, we are ready to go in optimal configurations for them. Next slide. Here's a little drawing. It's the same notebook I have on my desk right now. This was when we needed to come up with something new. We had been hoisting for about a year. We realized the lanyards we were using for hoisting our crews were not perfect. So out come the pen and paper, and we just start drawing ideas. Next slide. Prototype number one on the right, that little hoist lanyard there compared to the existing product we had been using. As you can see, we made it a lot smaller, slimmer, less bulky, with a bonus ring hanging from the middle there. Next slide. And there's the final product after, pen and paper. That was 12 months later, we came up with the final product. We have design engineers working on the structural components. We have pilots talking about what they want. We have hoist operators, downside rescue techs, seamstress. Everybody is working together for 12 months straight for us to come up with a little lanyard. It seems like an excessive project. When we're talking about search and rescue, we want our equipment to be perfect. North Shore Rescue, Coquitlam Search and Rescue, all the local rescue teams, they want the equipment to be perfect. We don't want to be fiddling with gear once we're underway in operation. So there's a lot behind the scenes before we go out flying. And that's really the key to my presentation is the work we do behind the scenes as pilots and as maintenance engineers to come up with the ideal product. So when we do go out flying, everything is as we want it. Next slide. Another big component is training. So we develop the products, we test the products, we come up with the perfect solution in theory, then we have to put it to use. We've developed this static hoist trainer here in our hangar. This one's about 15 feet in the air. It is an actual helicopter airframe bolted on those extensions up in the air. So we can do hoist training in the hangar with an identical hoist, identical aircraft as what the crews use in flight. So this was day one of testing that new adapted hoist lanyard. With its features built in. We go out and do an operation once. We've probably trained 10 times leading up to that moment. Training is a huge component of what we do. Obviously, we do go do flight training as well. Very expensive at times to send the helicopter out flying for days on end for training. So one of the ways we've worked with our local teams here is this hoist static trainer is now allowing pilots, hoist operators, rescue techs to develop a lot of key hoisting skills while still indoors in the hangar here for training. And then once it's all dialed in, we head out for flight. Next slide. Then we get to go put all that training tools and equipment that we've worked on into good use. So this was the flooding, November 2021, just a few months ago. This is over Sumas Prairie in Abbotsford. All that brown water you see in the photo, none of that water should be there. That should be farmers' fields, thousands of chickens and cows and horses, etc., and all the barns. We were tasked on several different calls, day and night on this operation. In this case, they're heading down to hoist a couple of people off of a roof who were stranded. They had been there multiple days at this point. I believe this was day 3 of the flooding. But as you can see, 2 rescue techs being hoisted down. They're wearing life jackets, hoist operator up top, wearing life jacket. It's a over land, but also over water search and rescue operation. this very much gave us the thoughts and feelings of what it would have been like to be down south in the United States for Hurricane Katrina, and that sort of thing. On a smaller scale, of course, here, but in the area that was flooded, it was devastating, and it was quite shocking to see from the air. So tying this back into the first few slides, when we get launched to this flooding, we had never done a mass flooding situation like this in the past. When we arrive on site, we don't want to worry about the aircraft, the crew, the equipment. When we arrive to the first mass flooding we've ever dealt with, we want to just be able to drop in, be ready to go, help the people in need. There's no fiddling with the gear at this point. All the behind the scenes work for years of development of the perfect equipment. All the training behind the scenes is all taken care of. We can just deploy our rescuers, the pilot, the hoist operator, the rescuers, the equipment, everything's dialed and ready to go. And then we can go pull off these rescues seamlessly without having any worry at all, except for just helping the people in need. Next slide. And that's the last slide I've got there, but this again, tying it back to what we had said before, training, training, training. This is another photo of us out training, just a single rescuer being hoisted down, working on some procedures. We spend a lot of time developing equipment, training with the equipment over and over and over, just so when we are needed, we're ready to go, and it's going to make that actual rescue, the part where we do make it into the news or you know, that high profile event, there's hundreds and hundreds of days of progress, training, equipment, planning, approvals, all of that stuff is all leading up. So when we are called to go help out with a wildfire, a search and rescue event, etc., we're ready to go. So it's all a lot of fun. I love the development side of it. I love working with the team here at Talon, you know, pulling out a pen and paper, drawing an idea. Training programs, we have a lot of fun during our training sessions. We learn a lot always, but it's always a good time. And then the actual operational side is a blast as well. I wouldn't trade it for any other operation. If I was asked to do it all over again, I'd hope I could follow the exact same path I'm on right now. And like I said, the behind the scenes work all leading up to the event, it's all a lot to undertake, but it's spread out over time. It all seems to work really well, and I really enjoy doing it. That's all for me. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for that, Jared. Thanks for the work you do, saving lives and fighting fires, keeping the public safe. I'm glad to see that notepads and cocktail napkins are still bridging ideas into airworthy products. It's something I wouldn't change for anything. For the audience, we will be having a Q&A session at the end of today's talk. So if you have any questions for our panelists, you can type them into the GoToWebinar control center on the right side of your screen. Our next speaker is Noah Pawlowski with the North Shore Rescue. He joined North Shore Rescue in 2018 after being involved in multiple mountain rescue operations requiring significant route finding. He began promoting the idea of mini drones as a means to assist navigation in treacherous and difficult terrain. He now leads the mini drone program with the North Shore Rescue, and has been involved in rolling out the use of thermal vision equipped drones for night operations. In his spare time, he can be found in the mountains with his family. I think he's had a good year for that so far. So Noah, take it away. We're really excited to hear what you have to say.
Hey everyone, and thanks, Jared. That was an awesome talk. So yeah, the basic sort of format, I just gonna say what we're using drones for now, and kind of the pros and cons of them, and then our future plans. I've got some slides. I'm not seeing them on my side. Yeah, so just next slide. So yeah, as Wesley was talking about, the initial force behind getting the mini drone program going was on a route finding and navigation basis. If you can go back one slide, this is a little video here. This is up in Strathcona. It's a very rugged part of Vancouver Island, and we were looking for a guy who had gone missing up along this sort of ridge line. So the higher point of that is the summit, and that ridge spreads out over maybe 2 kilometers. And you can see the group of us just on the very lower, call it like 2 o'clock part of that summit. There's a little tiny group of people. We were able to use the drone to look over the top of this ridge line. It took about 3 or 4 minutes of flying versus hours and hours of actual walking around in very treacherous terrain. Saved us a ton of time. It's a lot safer for us on the ground. Go to the next slide. And this is just a sequence of images coming out along that ridgeline. So next slide. And so you can still see that little tiny group of us up on the top there. And this is about 1 kilometer away now. Next slide. So we're still that group in the very back part of the image. So you can kind of get a sense of how long it might take to clear that on foot if you want to just have a look through that ridge line. And next slide. And that's looking down over the group, down that ridge line that was scanned. Again, just that to give you a sense of how rugged the terrain is in Strathcona. It's not trivial ground to travel, and it's quite treacherous. So having that experience with the mini drone and maybe making it that much faster and safer to do a quick sort of peak type look around really gave us all a lot of enthusiasm for the use of the mini drone. Can you go to the next slide? I think this is a video. I'm not sure if it's going to play. I can speak to it in any case. If you would go to the next slide, it might play a little bit more smoothly. This is a navigational slide. So in the bottom left, you can see there's a snow field. On the right side, if the camera were to shift and pan right, there's a gendarme. And the problem here was we needed to get to the peak of that particular summit. And we had 2 route options. One was traversing that ice field, snow field on bottom left, which had a pretty bad fall. If slip and fall went uncontrolled, it was not going to be good. Or we could go up the gendarme and hopefully we'd connect and we could reach the summit. We didn't know whether or not the gendarme connected. We were able to deploy the drone very quickly, fly the gendarme, see that it did not connect, saved ourselves at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half of climbing and down climbing, and just used the snowfield route up and around the side there. Go to the next slide.
Sorry, just a second. It's giving me some just a small technical issue trying to go to the next slide.
Okay, yeah, no fine. So that's one of these areas where we, okay, yeah, that's actually a better image. So that's looking back towards the gendarme. So the snowfield would be behind us in that shot. And you can just make out where we're staged, where there's a little tiny red dot down in the center, just where that kind of nose of rock ends. And that's the group of 3 or 4 of us. And our question is whether or not we could ascend that ramp up and make the summit. And you can see clearly from this angle, there's a notch, and that's not going to go. So instead, we traverse down low and through. Being able to make those kind of navigational decisions on the fly is awesome. When you're out in the field, you of course have access to fairly good maps, but microterrain is really difficult to map at the kind of resolution where you can make those types of route finding choices while you're there. So either you need a local with you, or you need to really get eyes on the actual terrain, and having one of these little mini drones makes that a lot easier. If that's not going to play, we can just go to the next slide. So I think this is a video as well. So what this was going to show is the use of the drone for peeking down gullies and over cliffs. And it's another really big use case. There's going to be some slides later on where you can see how much work it takes to get a rope deployed to safely lean out and look down a gully or look down over a ledge. Whereas with the drone, it's very, very straightforward to get it deployed, look out at no risk to anybody's life or limb. If we lose the drone, we lose the drone. It's not the end of the world. But if we can prevent people from having to be at risk of a fall, and I mean, you can get a sense maybe of how dramatically bad falling would be in that terrain, then it's a great advantage for us. If you go to the next slide. So this is another example of how quickly we can get eyes on. This is just a flight where we wanted to look at a ridge line and detect whether or not a group had stayed on the ridge or they descended off of the ridge. So you can see those ski tracks down off to our left. So that's I guess that would be the 9 o'clock position. Where we were based, we weren't able to see those lines at all. So we were able to see those skiers who left the ridge. Again, part of what's really incredible about using these drones is their size. They're super, super easy to pack and bring along. The ones that we're using are the Mini 2s, so they're sub 250 grams. The other part of that, which operationally is fantastic, is they aren't bound by the same set of regulations as the larger drones. So the larger drones have two big operational obstacles. One is they are kind of a pain to pack. When you're out in the field in those types of situations, in that type of terrain, space in the backpack is at a premium. So if you're talking about bringing along another 1.5 kilos, it's probably not going to happen. And then that other obstacle is regulations. They become pretty difficult to fly in accordance with rules and regulations. And those two things tend to make it so they just don't come along. And you go to the next slide. So same sort of thing. This, again, I think this was also a video. The video would have given you a sense of how much terrain you're able to cover in a relatively short period of time. So within a minute or 2 minutes, we were able to come from a much lower base camp area, fly up along a ridge line. The video actually has us flying up to that cornice at the 12 o'clock position and checking in behind it, where you can see those ski tracks coming down.
No, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I do have the video for this, but the link in the slide is what's not working, if that makes sense. Okay. So I can go ahead, I can try to pull that video up right now if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely, please.
Okay, give me just 1 second.
Yep. That's a bit choppy, but yeah, that's giving the sense of it. So to get to the same position, if we wanted to look at the back part of the summit and actually travel up there, it represented probably 2 hours worth of travel. Whereas with the drone, we were able to get it done in just a few minutes. Yeah, thank you. And next slide. Okay, great. So this is from a very recent search, actually. And we were tasked with clearing the cliff on the right side of this rock here. So that group on the top are just people out recreating. Go to the next slide. So there was a concern that somebody had slipped and fallen somewhere around either the right side of that outcropping of rock or down the front of the nose. It's a little bit difficult to tell from this angle, but it's quite a steep abrupt drop off the front from the 12 o'clock position, as well as dropping out on that sort of 2 or 3 o'clock position. Next slide. And next slide. This is just a kind of overview of the terrain. So looking down, you can see off of that right side, that's quite a steep cliff. It's nearly vertical. It's not quite, but it may as well be. It's mossy. It's all slick, and it is a dangerous area to operate in, particularly if you're trying to do a coordinated search. Next slide. So at the top of the screen there, near the tree, you can see the guy in the yellow. It's one of our members. He's running an anchor, and on the edge of the cliff there is the other member. She's engaged in looking over the ledge. That image is to try and give you a sense of how long it would take to set up and properly clear that whole area. If you need to find an anchor, you need to deploy your line, you need to safely get out to the edge, you need to lean over, look, clear as much of that area as you can, and then redo that for that entire area. And this was just for a speculative search. There wasn't a ton of confidence that we were going to find what we were looking for there, but we did need to clear it in any case. And it's an example where we would never want to use a helicopter. It's a waste of resources. It's not really the right thing for them to be doing. So for us to go in and clear on foot, which is what we traditionally do, would probably take a couple hours. We were having one team do that while I flew the drone. We were able to clear it in probably half an hour. Go to the next slide. So you can see that's actually an image from the drone. I was able to fly down the cliff that's looking up to our member, who was looking over and trying to detect anything lower down. And to give you a sense of the versatility of these things, when you get a bit more confident flying them, you can get them into some really narrow, tight areas. Next slide. And again, that's just sort of an overview shot, trying to give you a sense of where we were looking and how deep down into that I was able to get the drone. Next slide. And those are the shots again for the drone. So able to see quite clearly down and look around and clear that terrain in a confident way. We're also mostly looking for ledges. We had a team that was on the ground below doing their search. And so where we were looking, the rope team and the drone team was on those ledges in the intervening space between the bottom and the top of the cliff. Next slide. And again, just to kind of give you a sense of the terrain. Next slide. So these are the final 2 slides, and this is kind of the part of the future of the drone use. Most of what we've done with the drone is during the day. Night use has been limited for obvious reasons. If a person has a flashlight or they're lit up, then the drone can be of some use, but it's difficult to detect even in quite dark settings. The camera's not really good at picking up that kind of light. Whereas with the thermal drones, the thermal camera, if somebody's not too insulated, as you can see in that image, those are 2 members standing on a bridge. We were looking down into the water below that bridge to see if we could find a subject. It's very clear. They pop out nice and crisply. You can go to the next slide. And again, that's from a thermal drone. That's probably 100 meters up, zoomed in, and very quickly able to determine whether or not there's anything warmer than the ambient terrain. There are some problems with the thermal drones. There's obviously no limitations of the technology, but it is pretty exciting. And as we get it into a smaller and smaller package, then it'll be more useful. Currently, it's limited to use on a much larger drone, so we're not going to deploy it in the same way that we would with a mini drone. And just sort of to backtrack on that slightly, the big advantage of that mini drone is that they are really easy to pack. They're relatively inexpensive, and the use of them is actually quite simple as well. So a member can just have one in the pack, and if you don't use it, it's no problem. Nobody's really that put out. Whereas again, if you're packing in something that's a couple of kilos, you definitely want to use it if you bring it. And it's not something you just kind of bring in an off the cuff way. So going forward, hopefully what we see from the manufacturers of these drones is, first and foremost, battery life. They already fly for 20 minutes or so on a charge, which is decent. But if we could keep them up for 40 minutes or an hour, obviously that would be that much better. The range is already pretty good. We can get out 5-6 kilometers if we need to, and that's further than you need to for the type of stuff we're doing. We're not really using them to do searches in the way that a lot of people imagine, where you're covering an area and intensively looking over it. It really is more for peeking into gullies off of cliffs and doing navigational aid. So we'd love to see that. Whether it happens, who knows? I'm sure batteries will get better in the future. And I think I've got one more slide, which is a video, and hopefully that one will play, because this gives a really good sense, I think, of the capability of these drones. So if you can get that one to play, that would be great. And this is up in the mountains outside of Squamish here. And these guys are way up on snow fields. And we were able to fly up from the lake. This is going to look up the snowfield, up to the summit where they were descending from. There's the other group. And so they were coming off of that ridge line, up of that summit. And this drone was deployed from there, the back part of that lake. So to be able to fly up quickly and make an assessment like that, if someone had been hurt or if they needed something, it really expands your capacity dramatically. They're an incredible technology, and we're happy to be able to use them and hope to get a lot of use out of them in the future. That's about it. Thanks very much, everybody. And I'm happy to take any questions later on.
Thanks, Noah. I love seeing early adopters take new technology and finding opportunities to save lives with it. It's great to see that drones can save precious minutes in that golden hour to find people after they're lost or after injuries. So it's great work you guys are doing there. I also learned that I need to up my drone photography game. You're putting me to shame with those pictures. It's really some great stuff in there. Noah, what are the limitations regarding trees, cliffs, mountains, and other obstacles for the drone? Where can they not get to?
It's a good question. The limitation is the pilot, really, and what you're confident in doing. The drones that we use, the mini drones, they have very little in the way of obstacle avoidance. So you're flying it, and it's what you're comfortable flying. So that's really it. I mean, it's totally different from operator to operator. I'll fly in areas where, say, one of my colleagues might not want to, just because I spend more time on it. It's a very perishable skill, so you got to spend a lot of time doing it. But yeah, they're really versatile. Like the controls themselves are really good. So whatever you can navigate, you can fly.
Okay. Yeah, if you ever watch like the videos that the Skydio puts up and stuff like that, they can fly a drone into super tight spaces. You just got to be willing to crash it or confident in your skill set. So it's very versatile piece of equipment. For Francois and Steve from Mark Bustamante, how do you compare your fleet and capacity to other provincial police forces?
If I can answer, or if I can give you an answer, it's for Canada, we are the only one police force who do the search and rescue, helicopter search and rescue. So we have the same capacity of Canadian Army Forces for the SARTEC. We have the same capacity, and we do the same thing, but only in Quebec.
Okay. So. Next question is for Noah. You said that endurance and weight are important. What about time for deployment?
Yeah, we've been really happy with that. The current time deployment, again, this is speaking specifically to the mini drones, very rapid. I can have it out of my pack and in the air in under 2 minutes in most cases. So it's been phenomenal. The larger drones, there is a little bit more elaborate work involving it in that, but we don't use them much. It is mostly these micro sort of mini drones. Very rapid. I'm happy with it. I don't see much room for improvement. It literally, as long as it takes to get it out of the case and press the power button. So it's pretty good.
So carrying a case that's twice the size to be able to shave a half a second, because you're using the micro drones, the one with the fold out arms. Yeah. So it, you know, it takes you live demonstration. There you go.
Boom, and you're off.
Yeah.
Pretty quick.
So having something that, you know, I don't know if it's even possible to have something that deploys faster. And okay. Excellent. And then Mr. Emblin had some questions about night hover refills. We'll forward that one to Jarrett to get you an answer, Eric. Sorry, he had to go fly. And last question from Ken Schwartz. In British Columbia, I understand that there are local search and rescue groups in each region of the province. How are they organized and funded? Do you have any exposure or information on that, Noah?
Yeah, it's organized by region. So, for example, North Shore covers the North Shore, and then there would be Lions Bay, and then there would be Squamish, and there would be Whistler. So there's geographic descriptors for each one based on sort of the bandwidth that each team can handle. And then the funding is provincial. BC Sarah is the sort of big overarching pet thing, and I believe there are some amount of dollars that come in federally, but the vast majority is provincial.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much to our presenters who volunteered their time to give this talk today. I found it very educational. I hope the audience did as well. So thank you again for your time, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.